I died again. Oh, man. Do I really need to level the new characters for the campaign? Hi, Zizaran here with another video. Diablo 4 just announced that they're going to have adventure mode similar to Diablo 3, which is an alternative form of leveling when you don't like the campaign. It can be very tedious, do the campaign repeatedly, and Path of Exile doesn't have this, even though we specifically requested it. A lot of players really want an alternative leveling method, but TGD have been very stubborn and they've said that they would consider this in PoE 2 if people still feel the same way. However, they feel like they would have failed if people don't enjoy the PoE 2 campaign. So is this even possible? Should we always have an alternative way of leveling? Should we just start in maps? So that's what this video is going to be about. That's what we're going to talk about. It's a very interesting thing. ARPGs for like 80% of their existence didn't even have an endgame. Where games like Diablo 2 and like that, a lot of the early games that came in the genre, they just had the campaign, and then sometimes you would just be farming parts of the campaign, like Mephisto farming, etc., with either none to very little endgame. Diablo 2 having, for example, the Uber bosses. But other than that, there wasn't much outside of the campaign. And then if you just started with everything finished, you would have barely nothing in the game, right? But that's pretty much no longer the case, where ARPGs are starting to have a very large functioning endgame with a lot of different content to do, and the campaign being a pretty minor thing that maybe only adds unnecessary tedium at the start of your journey. I want to talk a little bit about how I feel about this and if it needs to change. I actually do think in Path of Exile it is a little bit of a softcore problem. By that I mean, on softcore, you have no real sense of progression outside of your first character. On your first character, you probably do care a little bit about, getting a little bit better gear, but you can face rush the bosses with very little penalty during the campaign. 10% experience at like level 40 is nothing compared to, well, it's actually 5% experience at that point, but either way, is nothing compared to losing 10% of your experience at level 97. So the death penalty doesn't really exist there. It just wastes a little bit of time. So we do often see people face rushing down bosses where people joke like, wow, I just had 60 deaths to Kitava. They're a new player maybe. Whereas on hardcore, you don't have this issue. On hardcore, you end up really needing to focus a lot on your gear progression, or you will literally lose your character and have to start entirely over. So this isn't an issue we really have on hardcore, because on hardcore, if you die, you have to start over, and that makes it a lot more engaging. You literally have to care about your gear upgrades, and each act you maybe consider, am I strong enough to continue, or do I want to over level in this zone? So then you're already playing the game and your upgrades already matter, and you might even find a ring or something during the campaign that you'll keep into your far 90s. So obviously, especially for solo self on hardcore, this is much less of an issue, and that's why you might often hear hardcore players have much less of an issue with the campaign. Another thing that's important to know is that sometimes people will go through the campaign very quickly due to having practiced speedrunning, and then they might even have less of a problem with the campaign. Whereas a new player could sometimes take 10 to 20 hours to go through the campaign for something that might only take me 3 hours. So these are some of the issues. I don't necessarily think that there's a mandatory need to remove the campaign, but I think there are some good ways that you can make the campaign a lot more enjoyable and smooth for your second progression. I guess there's nothing wrong with having an adventure mode either. It does cut down on some sort of sense of progression. Obviously, that, like I said, isn't that much there on softcore, but I think adventure mode is definitely something worth exploring, but it isn't necessary either. So some alternative to adventure modes that would be really good quality of life would be, for example, either if your character hits level 80 or 90, or that you've just done the campaign, what if waypoints unlocked for all characters you were making? That would alleviate a little bit of the leveling pressure and make things go a little faster. Another thing, which they've sort of been very anti, is strong leveling items. Back in the day, we had something called Delve leveling gloves, where you would use different elemental fossils, and these would make gloves with global damage. This damage would even affect heralds, and would make, well, you could basically clear with Herald of Thunder while leveling. And this changed the leveling meta a lot, because what's very, very common is people will make a leveling build and then respec when they're high level. But with things like this, you could instantly start even a fairly annoying and clunky build like even Spark in the leagues where it was weak, etc. Because maybe you wanted to play it endgame, but it wasn't a good leveling build at the time, and strong leveling gear alleviated that. We've also had uniques in the past, or essences, that affected low level items and didn't get a high level requirement cap. And I am actually a huge fan of this. I really like it when either uniques or essences or endgame items can be used on new characters, because they completely unaffect your first character, but they can become really, really interesting for leveling new characters. It's pretty fun, honestly, at least in my opinion, when you're able to get things like 7 League Step, but there's not that many leveling items like that in the game. Currently, we do have some. Like, for example, you can get 1,000 ribbons, a 7 League Step. Tabitha is okay as well. I do prefer 1,000 ribbons, obviously, due to the crazy amount of damage it adds. And links aren't that important early. +1 Tabitha or +2 Tabitha does make a very big difference, however. Weapons, we don't have as many twink items anymore. But there are several things you can do, and you have things like Loctonial, Caress, and Gold Rim, etc. for leveling. But what if there were more items like 7 League Step? That is like a very endgame thing that's hard to get. It's even quite rare, but it makes a very big difference for your leveling. I think this would be very cool. I also really miss it when the endgame essences like Horror, Delirium, Insanity, or Hysteria could be used on leveling items. People would make the Burning Ground boots and just walk over the content, and it was very fun. It was basically make your own Alberon's warpath. So more things like this would be very, very cool, and I think it would alleviate the process a lot. You can also make, just like I said, the waypoints accessible, and we do have very, very easy ways to make alternative leveling. For example, Delve. Delve could be a very easy adventure mode where it would open up a lot of different ways of progressing, and you can have, they've already shown that you can ascend in the Delve Labyrinth. You wouldn't even need to do that. You could still just ascend normally. But there are a lot of options available here for GGG. Either way, I just thought it was an interesting thing to talk about, if this is something that should change in PoE 2. Obviously, PoE 2 has a chance to change this. Maybe they'll make a very interactive campaign. I am obviously worried that there isn't a good way to make a campaign that you're gonna enjoy on your 15th character that league. And the best way to sort this out is to have strong leveling items. Last Epoch has a very strong way of fixing this, in my opinion. Last Epoch has something called legendary potential on unique items, and you can find that especially easy on leveling uniques. And I think if they remove the level requirement when you make a legendary, this will make you very excited to make a new character. You might have a super overpowered item that will trivialize the leveling, and honestly, that's definitely something I personally will look forward to, because it obviously doesn't matter in the grand scheme of the game at all. This is only something that's going to affect your character's first 5, maybe 10 hours, and it'll make it exciting. And I think anything that'll make your 5th or 10th or 20th character in a gameplay league exciting is a huge win, especially if it doesn't affect balance in any way. So very important, in my opinion, to consider. Either way, I would love to hear, what do you guys think? Do you guys think leveling is fine the way it is? Do you want an adventure mode? Do you just want to start in maps? I do think that it's important to have some sort of early progression. I'm not a big fan of just starting at level 60 or 70, but be interesting to see what you guys think, or if you think any of my ideas were good ideas. Either way, hope you guys are enjoying all the content. Thanks for watching. Sub if you liked the video, but more importantly, try to die less than I do.